This week in the business of tech, Gartner says you're doing hybrid work wrong, Amazon's $3 billion Alexa loss, the most challenging parts of managing SaaS applications, insightful data from the legal field on technology use, and the UK implements mandatory reporting for MSPs. All these stories and more. Hit those like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. After the long weekend, I told myself I'd look for new stories, which of course means that two catnip-infused storylines I've been following had to make a return. First, some research that Gartner published about changes in work. Quoting the research, "As economic conditions sour, you may be tempted to take back more control over work, for example by mandating a rigid return to the office. Our data shows that that would be a big mistake. We surveyed more than 400 employees and leaders of organizations around the world who have worked consistently under some kind of hybrid work model since the pandemic. Most of those work models delivered below average outcomes, but one is wildly successful. Our findings show that the failing models are all location-centric, attaching some kind of rigid on-site requirement. Only one model scored above average, hybrid flexible, which offers leaders and employees some flexibility to choose where they work from. More successful still is a hybrid flexible model that incorporates other key elements of human-centric work design. That is location flexibility plus the practices of intentional collaboration and empathy-based management. You can't just port over your work and management approaches from an on-site environment and expect them to work in a hybrid world. But if you transition successfully to a human-centric hybrid approach, our data shows you can clearly foil flight and power performance among employees." The research focuses on how accountable employee autonomy is the required element. They offer those three statements: a flexible work experience, being intentional about collaboration, and empathy-based management as the critical factors to success. And you want to get employee input. Those that did were more than 2.5 times more likely to achieve high performance. I'll add to this another set of interesting data. The Washington Post highlights that remote jobs are in demand, but drying up. According to a recent job site report, 50% of job applicants submitted on LinkedIn are for work-from-home positions, making up just 15% of listings. And although there are nearly 2 job openings for each applicant regarding on-site work, the opposite is true for remote jobs. There are 2 active applicants for each available work-from-home job on LinkedIn. That means the gap between demand for jobs and supply of workers for on-site positions is 4 times as high as it is for remote work. Why do we care? What I expected to happen is playing out, and data reinforces it. Intentional choices about the design of hybrid work are paying off. Plus, when that data is held up against the jobs data, showing a demand by potential employees to work remotely. If you're finding it difficult to find people, make sure you're offering remote work. And then, to make it successful, be deliberate in the way that it is implemented. It's paying off. The other big story of the long weekend, which I have to note for my predictions, is about Amazon. Specifically, Alexa. Quoting Insider, "During the first quarter of this year, Amazon's worldwide digital unit, which includes everything from the Echo smart speakers and Alexa voice technology to the Prime Video streaming service, had an operating loss of over $3 billion, according to internal data obtained by Insider. The vast majority of worldwide digital's losses were tied to Amazon's Alexa and other devices. A person familiar with the division told Insider, the loss was by far the largest among all of Amazon's business units and slightly double the losses from its still small physical stores and grocery business. While Amazon's business model has traditionally tolerated this kind of poor financial performance from its hardware businesses, that's no longer true. According to press reports and an internal email seen by Insider, Amazon's Alexa and devices team at large is now the prime target of the biggest layoffs in the company's history. Why do we care? I've been very bullish on voice. I'm convinced it's the UI of the future. Alexa is not a UI, it's a platform. I'm including a link to Stacy on IoT's piece about voice in general, and her thinking and mine match. Voice itself is a UI and not a platform, of which digital assistants are a platform. Quoting Stacy, "So as we look at Amazon's Alexa layoffs, I don't think it reflects a bet against voice or a bet against the smart home. It's an indication that we need to separate voice as a user interface from digital assistants and figure out how to give digital assistants the context they need to become something people will pay for. Finding ways to monetize platforms is the trick. Don't lump voice as a UI in with the platform nor digital assistant. And so, I'm still bullish on voice as a user interface." New data from Snow Software, IT leaders are most concerned about shadow IT, security, configuration issues, and duplicate applications when analyzing the most challenging aspects of managing SaaS applications. Quoting CIO Dive, "More than 2 in 5 IT leaders took issue with employees adding new SaaS applications without notifying IT and struggled to manage the security of SaaS applications. Limiting the amount of duplicate SaaS applications and identifying configuration issues were the other top challenges for 2 in 5 IT leaders, according to the report. More than half of IT leaders said if budget, resources, and time were not a factor, they would implement SaaS application buying training for all employees responsible for purchasing, according to the report, which surveyed 1,000 IT leaders from large organizations of 500 or more employees in the US and UK. Why do we care? On Monday, I'm hosting a panel on YouTube talking about the cloud and SaaS, and it's this struggle I'm thinking about. An area of chaos is an area of opportunity. Yet so far, the SaaS space continues to be overly complicated from an IT management perspective. It's a complex problem, and that's why I'm interested and we care. Solving it will be profitable. Some market data caught my eye too. First, let's look at the consumer. Despite inflation concerns, online sales on Black Friday were up 2.3% year over year, according to Adobe Analytics. Electronics were a major growth driver, with sales up 221% over the average day in October. Smart home items were up 271%, audio equipment was up 230%, toys were up 285%, and exercise equipment was up 218%. Mobile transactions accounted for a record 48% of online sales, up from 44% last year. However, there's new pay data too, and wages are falling, not rising. From Axios, the U.S. wage data points to workers succeeding at attaining a one-time surge in pay in 2021 and the early months of 2022, but also suggests wage growth is receding to closer to normal rates. Average hourly earnings among private sector workers rose at a 3.9% annual rate in the 3 months that ended in October. That's down from a recent high of 6.3% in the late 2021 and 5.9% as recently as the 3 months ended in July. And out with some SMB survey data from the summer, some insights into levels of concern across industries regarding inflation and recession. Topping the lists of industries very concerned about inflation are wholesale and distribution at 71%, agriculture at 63%, and hospitality at 59%. At the bottom, nonprofits at 44%, retail at 43%, and healthcare at 40%. IT services are in there at 49%. On the recession side, rating very concerned, 52% of manufacturing, 50% agriculture, 47% financial services, and at the bottom, retail 29%, education 27%, and nonprofits 25%. IT services right in there at 38%. Why do we care? Seems consumers are not worried, despite the fact that their pay won't go as far. Perhaps a good sign of confidence? Rather than the broad confidence, it's the specific industry guidance to consider. As always, get close to your customers and dig into which industries you serve and are worried about versus those that aren't, and adjust your plans accordingly. So this is a data point I can't get out of my head. IT Web, based in South Africa, published a profile on Rentosa, an on-demand subscription-based online platform for electronics and appliances. Here's the quote from the CMO and co-founder. "We've been growing by around 35% month on month for the last 20 months, and annually we grew about 400% year on year in terms of total revenue from subscriptions. People gravitate towards this model because it's really a new access model for all the essential items they require. People are now seeing they can manage their products and lifestyle very differently with a model such as ours, which allows them flexibility." Why do we care? I like data from different markets to consider, and the growth of a subscription hardware offering in South Africa leaves me pondering the implications. Frankly, I don't know why this intrigues me so much, and yet it's lingered in my head since I read it. Not having all the data and answers is okay, and I hope this data point stimulates someone else's great idea. Despite all the gloom and doom around jobs, it seems American employees aren't that worried. Across all income groups, the share of U.S. adults who fear they could lose their position in the next month ticked down during November, and is sitting near series low points according to the Morning Consult and Axios Inequality Index dating back to May 2020. So despite all that pessimism from those that talk about it, the workers themselves, optimistic. So how about data on what SMBs are focusing on? CompTIA's SMB tech buying trends says 62% of respondents identify technology as a primary factor in reaching their goals, with 31% saying it's a secondary factor. Hiring skilled workers is cited as a top objective by 39% of respondents, up from 25% in 2021. Similarly, 38% of SMBs seek to innovate and implement new ideas and innovations, compared to 26% last year. Other key objectives include implementing new efficiencies, identifying new segments and markets, successfully launching new products and services, and renewing and maintaining key customer accounts. Accordingly, the research finds that SMBs plan to increase tech spending in critical areas. 28% plan to invest in innovations, up from 19% last year, and 16% plan to hire more staff, up from 13%. In addition, 11% plan to increase spending on training and certification of staff, up from 5% in 2021. At the same time, SMBs plan to reduce spending on upgrades to staff hardware, video conferencing and collaboration tools, and website, e-commerce, and mobile solutions. Why do we care? Has the narrative gotten ahead of reality? Maybe. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy when we talk about bad times ahead, thus those times are created. I'm concerned about contributing to the trend and why my guidance has been to plan for downtimes and push forward. It's not to say I'm not nervous. I'm just trying to be tempered. Notably, there is a surge of new IT services companies during downtimes, so there's something good in the water, even if it's choppy. A data point I reference a lot about mainframes. Tech executives expect half of the legacy applications to be modernized in the next 2 years, according to an Infosys survey of 1,500 senior tech leaders released earlier this year. The survey found that 88% of systems are legacy and 45% reside on legacy mainframes. And with further insights from CIO Dive, concern over access to the right talent to properly maintain legacy systems was listed as a major concern by 3/4 of more than 400 companies surveyed for an October report by IT services provider Advanced. Nearly half said their pool of mainframe-capable talent is decreasing. The percentage of workers between 18 and 29 has increased, while those over 50 have a smaller share of the pie, according to BMC's survey. Women now make up 30% of mainframe workers, a 7% increase year over year. Why do we care? I often quip about how mainframes continue to be big business, no pun intended. For those mid-market and larger providers, this is significant business. While it's easy to focus on the cloud or fully modern systems, 45% of systems residing on legacy mainframes is non-trivial. Despite the talk of disruption, a healthy dose of realism is always welcome, and there's opportunity here. And while we're on skills and skill gaps, Skillsoft with their 2022 IT Skills and Salary Report. This year's survey found that 2/3 of IT decision makers had skills gaps in their teams. 53% of respondents stated they would likely look for a new job in the next 12 months. Further findings from the study include the following. 80% say skills gaps pose a high or medium risk to their team's ability to meet objectives. 63% have been unable to fill at least 3 positions in the last year. The top factors driving skills gaps are difficulties hiring skilled candidates, 44%, and employee retention, 33%, and 26% say not enough is being invested into training. The top 3 most challenging areas to find qualified talent are cloud computing, data analytics, big data and data science, and cybersecurity. IT professionals cite the benefits of training to be improved quality of work, 56%, increased engagement, 41%, and faster job performance, 36%. Why do we care? With the ever-increasing employee shortage stories in tech, there are 2 apparent moves. Service operators need to build more teams and invest in their employees' skills for retention and growth. Second, those same operators need to be considering their long-term investments too. How to invest in education to create more of the teams needed. If you're an MSP looking to grow your business by scaling your cyber practice, it's critical to offer a white label, multi-tenant SOC as a service. AgileBlue is that SOC XDR, detecting cyber attacks on the cloud, network, applications, and endpoints before a breach occurs. Trusting nothing while detecting everything, and staffed with a 24/7 expert set of threat hunters and cyber analysts who obsess over you and your client's cybersecurity, AgileBlue works side by side with your team. Join today and get 3 months of EDR free by visiting agileblue.com/pod to start. I spotted a series of reports from Law Technology Today, which I'm linking to as I summarize their findings. In the awkwardly named American Bar Association 2022 Legal Technology Survey Reports of Law Office Technology and Technology Basics and Security, data is summarized to try and break down technology use across solo practitioners, firms of 2 to 9 attorneys, firms of 10 to 49 attorneys, firms of 50 to 99 attorneys, firms of 100 to 499 attorneys, and firms of 500 or more. Desktops are on the decline in favor of laptops, unsurprisingly. In 2019, 57% of respondents reported using a desktop as their primary computer. In 2022, 41% of respondents reported using the desktop as their primary computer. 56% of respondents reported using a laptop as their primary computer, including 45% using a laptop docked with 1 or more monitors. More interestingly, practice management software, which would be the specific line of business app for lawyers, 63% of the respondents reported the availability of case and practice management software at their firm. The availability of practice management software has increased steadily in every demographic since 2019 regarding the use of case and practice management software. The percentage of respondents for solo practitioners rose from 32% in 2021 to 45% in 2022. For firms between 10 and 49, the number increased from 22% to 40%, and for firms of 100 or more attorneys, the number went from 17 to 19%. For larger firms, this number has remained relatively steady since 2019. However, the percentage of respondents in firms from 2 to 9 attorneys who actually used case and practice management software dropped from 61% to 46%. On security, the majority of respondents use some form of security tools in their practice, ranging from two-factor authentication at 53%, to virus scanning 64%, to mandatory passwords 74%. Reviewing the data, the use and implementation of encryption tools should remain a focus of concern. Only 40.1% of those surveyed used encryption for their email, and 49.2% used encryption for their files. The fewest percentage of users came from firms with 2 to 9 attorneys, at 30.4% for email and 34.8% for files, with the greatest number of those using encryption being in firms of 500 or more, 53.3% for email, 76.7% for files. And finally, let's look at cloud usage, with the survey authors note lags behind overall market. In 2022, 70% of respondents reported using cloud computing, up from 60% in 2021. For solos, cloud usage moved from 52% to 84% in just 1 year. Lawyers continue to use popular business cloud services like Dropbox, 66%, Microsoft 365, 59%, Microsoft Teams, 51%, iCloud, 21%, and Box, 18%, at rates far higher than dedicated legal cloud services. Why do we care? This is industry specific and useful to those who serve the legal space and those who don't. I won't dwell on the PC data, that should be obvious. It's the practice management software data I wanted to focus on. Availability versus use. There's a real gap. It speaks to not needing more technology and instead using the technology a business has. Training, consulting, and further implementation are obvious solutions here, and what better pitch to customers than helping them be effective with the technology they already have versus needing more. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this is also a failure of the technology and tech services industry. If customers have tools they bought and don't use, that's a problem. One to address for sure, just important to recognize the problem first. Super valuable data here. In data from Canalys, U.S. channel partners are trailing behind Europe on sustainability. According to research by Canalys and Schneider Electric, 75% of European partners have already at least one person focused on environmental, social, and governance. More than 75% of customer RFPs have sustainability criteria included. A reason? Regulation. Quote, "The European Union has got various regulations in place, but each individual country in Europe has different regulations as well. For example, in France, there's a regulation where at least 30% of public sector RFPs must contain refurb equipment. Those things are really driving partners' customers to focus on sustainability in their technology procurement. That is making a huge difference between the European and North American market," said Rachel Brindley, Senior Director, Channels at Canalys. Why do we care? Regulations do shape industries, and that's my obvious point here. I think sustainability is important, and will note that the market will not necessarily come to that conclusion, as the US and European divergence speaks to. The UK government is introducing a new mandatory reporting obligation on managed service providers to disclose cyber incidents, alongside minimum security requirements, which could see MSPs fined up to £17 million, the equivalent of $20 million, for non-compliance. Quoting the record, the government said on Wednesday that MSPs, quote, play a central role in supporting the UK economy, and warned they are an attractive and high-value target for malicious threat actors and can be used as staging points through which threat actors can compromise the clients of those managed services. MSPs are paid to manage IT infrastructure and provide support, often to smaller businesses that don't have a designated IT department. The new obligations on these providers will be introduced through an update to the Network and Information Systems Regulations, which in their current form require essential services such as water, energy, and transport to uphold security standards and notify national authorities about incidents. The existing reporting requirements are also going to be updated. Their effectiveness has been criticized following reporting, which revealed that, despite numerous security breaches affecting the energy and transport sectors, no incidents have ever met the actual thresholds for being disclosed to the government. The existing notification thresholds are based on whether the incidents impact the actual service the organizations provide. For instance, whether at least 50,000 customers went without electricity supply for more than 3 minutes. However, they do not account for the risks that activities exploiting a network can pose before they become attacks. Essential services will now need to notify regulators, quote, of a wider range of incidents that disrupt service or which could have a high risk or impact to their service, even if they don't immediately cause disruption, the government announced on Wednesday. The new thresholds have not been disclosed. They will be set by the sector-specific regulators in collaboration with the NCSC. Why do we care? If you're a UK-based MSP, and I know from my data that some of you are, this directly impacts your business and is primarily focused on specific industries. The takeaway for those in the US is that this is a model of how I would expect regulation to look here. Reporting and disclosure requirements, particularly around specific industries, with minimum standards and fines for non-compliance. Let's note that this level of penalty is significant. With most providers under $10 million in revenue, this has teeth. In new survey data from Glovo, European small businesses are not as optimistic as the data I've reported from American business owners. 46% of businesses across all 7 countries surveyed say they are, quote, in survival mode. Quoting the Next Web. According to studies, consumer behavior has changed considerably over the last couple of years, indicating a preference for digitalized services, whether online shopping or food deliveries or the like. Glovo's survey also found that 42% of SMEs surveyed believe their customers' digital experience is becoming more important than the in-person experience. Comparatively, nearly half of all businesses that were already digitized before the pandemic, and continue to be, have experienced slow but steady growth in the past 2 to 3 years. They also expect significant growth in the next 12 months. And while 1 in 3 UK businesses see digitalization as integral to growth, 2 in 3 still say they need help to become technologically innovative. Why do we care? Well, international stories are the theme today, and I want to observe how geography impacts outlook. The European markets are facing higher inflation and higher energy costs, and thus much more costly on the expense side. Let's also note this. As a general observation, Americans tend to be much more optimistic when reporting outlooks. It's a natural disposition. Thus, be warned about an inherent willingness to be optimistic. Now, the final observation. Those businesses who invested in digital are outperforming.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.